It was Christmas Eve. The snow outside the mall lay thick on the ground, muffling the sound of their laughter as they approached. The old building loomed ahead, dark and silent. Windows were black. Doors were locked tight, except for the entrance they had managed to open. The teens stepped inside, flashlights piercing through the shadows. The air was cold and still, carrying the faint scent of dust and abandoned food courts. "Guys, this place is huge," said Jamie, her voice echoing in the empty hall. "Come on, don't be scared. It's just a mall," Mark replied, though his hand trembled slightly as he swung the flashlight over mannequins, frozen in awkward holiday poses. The group moved cautiously, their footsteps bouncing off the tiled floor. Every corner they turned seemed darker than the last. Some stores had lights flickering weakly. Others were plunged into complete blackness. Shadows shifted at the edge of their vision. Something about the stillness felt alive. As they wandered deeper, Emily noticed something unusual on a low shelf behind a closed jewelry store. A bundle of old wrapping paper was tucked away, almost as if waiting for them. She bent over and lifted it. Underneath, a notebook lay, old but intact. Its cover was plain, leather-bound, and it felt heavy in her hands. The edges were worn, and faint smudges of something dark marked the corners. "Check this out," Emily whispered, showing the notebook to the others. "It has something inside." They gathered around as Jamie opened the pages. The writing was careful, precise, almost obsessive. The rules were numbered, 10 in total, each one short and direct. Jamie read aloud slowly, her voice low. Rule number 1. Never enter alone. Rule number 2. Stay together at all times. Rule number 3. Do not touch objects that move on their own. Rule number 4. Keep your phone on. Rule number 5. Do not take anything from the mall. Rule number 6. Always mark your location. Rule number 7. Never answer if your name is whispered. Rule number 8. Never run in the dark. Rule number 9. Do not leave the lighted areas. Rule number 10. Trust nothing you see in reflections. A chill ran down their spines. The last rule made Jamie pause. "That one sounds like a trap," she said quietly, flipping through the pages again. "It is probably just some old prank." Mark scoffed, though he glanced nervously at the dark corners of the mall. Despite their unease, curiosity drove them forward. They wanted to explore. The mall was massive, frozen in holiday decor, with garlands hanging from ceilings, lights flickering weakly, and small Santa figurines perched on shelves. One of the figurines on a nearby shelf tilted slightly, almost insane. A cold draft made the flames of nearby decorative candles flicker as if warning them. As they wandered, the first signs of the mall's peculiar nature became clear. Shadows seemed thicker, moving in ways that did not match their own. A soft metallic jingling echoed from the far end of the hall, though no one moved a single decoration. One of the teens, Sam, reached for a glittering ornament, ignoring the warning from the notebook. The moment his fingers brushed it, the ornament swung violently and clattered to the ground. A shiver ran down everyone's spine. "This place, something is off," Emily whispered, pulling her jacket tighter. The deeper they went, the darker it became. Their flashlights illuminated only narrow slices of the hallways, and every corner seemed to bend in ways that did not make sense. At one point, Jamie caught a movement in a mirrored storefront. A tall, faceless figure stood behind them, or so it seemed. But when she turned, no one was there. The reflection rippled as if the mirror itself had shifted. Mark laughed nervously. "It is just a reflection. Mirrors play tricks." But the others were not convinced. Every now and then, a shadow stretched across the wall that did not belong to anyone. The mall seemed to breathe around them, each step echoing more loudly than the last. The teens, despite their fear, began testing the rules. They split for a moment, trying to peek into different stores. A faint whisper carried Emily's name. She froze, recalling rule number 7. She did not answer. The whisper faded, but the hair on her arms stood on end. Sam wandered close to a moving object, brushing against a loose display. The object jerked violently, and the creature in the shadows, still mostly unseen, stretched a limb toward him. He yelped and stumbled back, heart racing. They tried marking their location with chalk on the floor, following rule number 6. But one mark they made vanished before their eyes, the hallway shifting subtly around them. The notebook's rules were clear, but the mall tested them. Lights flickered violently. Garlands swayed, though no wind entered. Decorations shifted subtly. The teens began to realize that breaking even minor rules brought consequences almost immediately. The tension rose, and the laughter that had brought them in melted away into heavy breathing and whispered warnings. By the time they reached the center court, a strange silence had fallen. Even the distant hum of the ventilation seemed gone. Only the faint jingling persisted, echoing somewhere in the dark reaches. Jamie clutched the notebook tightly. They all knew that the rules were more than just suggestions. Each step, each decision, could cost them dearly. Some of the teens, emboldened or reckless, began testing the rules more directly. Emily, still curious, stepped toward a darkened display despite rule number 9. A shadow stretched from the floor, long and bending unnaturally. It recoiled and vanished when she stepped back. But the warning was clear. The mall was alive, and the notebook was their only guide. At the far end of the court, a faint red glow appeared. It came from a reflection in the large central fountain. Jamie froze. The faceless figure now stood partially visible in the reflection. Its limbs were impossibly long, bending unnaturally. Its eyes glowed faintly red. It did not move forward, but watched. The teens' pulse raced as they realized the creature's attention was now fully on them. The notebook, the rules, the darkened mall, and the faceless creature had converged. Only obedience, and maybe luck, could keep them safe. They did not yet know which rule was the trap, and the first consequences were only beginning to unfold. The hallway seemed endless. Every step echoed off the empty walls, bouncing back at them in uneven rhythms. The snow outside muffled all other sounds, making them all feel isolated from the world. The air inside was cold, damp, and smelled faintly of dust and old decorations. Their flashlights cut through the shadows, revealing twisted reflections in the empty store windows. The mannequins stared with blank eyes, frozen in holiday cheer, but somehow they felt aware. "Let's check the food court," Sam suggested. His voice trembled slightly. "I want to see if anything is left behind." "Stay together," Jamie said, holding the notebook close. She reminded herself and the others of rule number 2. They moved as a group, trying to ignore the rising sense of dread. At first, nothing happened. The group laughed nervously, their steps echoing. Then, a small metallic jingling came from the far side of the hall. It was soft at first, almost like a bell, but it repeated and seemed closer each time. The teens froze. "Do you hear that?" Emily whispered. "It's probably just decorations," Mark said, though his voice lacked confidence. Sam wandered a few steps ahead, curious, forgetting rule number 2. He reached toward a candy machine that had somehow shifted, though they had all seen it in a different position before. The machine rattled violently, shaking toward him. His flashlight flickered, and for a brief moment, a shadow stretched long along the floor, bending toward him unnaturally. Sam yelped and stumbled back into the group, panting. "That was close," Jamie said. Her voice shook. Rule number 3, do not touch objects that move on their own. They moved on ahead, more cautiously this time. The mall was silent again, but a faint red glow flickered in the corner of the main hallway. One of the mannequins nearby seemed slightly out of place. Its head turned just enough to follow their movements. "Guys, I don't like this," Emily said. "We should leave." "Not yet," Mark said. He tried to sound confident, but his grip on the flashlight tightened. "We just need to see a little more. It's probably harmless." The group continued through the food court. Tables were overturned. Chairs lay scattered across the tiles. Faded holiday decorations hung from the ceiling, swaying slightly as if touched by an invisible breeze. They passed a fountain in the center. Its water had long since dried up, leaving behind a cracked surface that reflected the dim flashlight beams. The reflection shimmered strangely, and Jamie paused. Her eyes caught movement, but when she turned, No one was there. Then, a faint whisper carried Emily's name. She froze. The hair on her arms stood on end. "It's rule number 7, Jamie reminded her softly. "Never answer if your name is whispered." Emily did not answer. The whisper faded, but the silence that followed felt heavier than the sound itself. They pressed forward, moving toward the central atrium. As they walked, Sam's curiosity got the better of him again. He stepped into a darkened hallway, ignoring rule number 9 about staying in lighted areas. The shadows here were thicker, bending strangely along the walls. A cold gust made the garlands sway violently, and the faint red glow seemed to pulse as if alive. A sudden movement caught their attention. A tall, faceless figure appeared just at the edge of Sam's flashlight. Its limbs were impossibly long and bent unnaturally. Its eyes glowed faintly red, fixed on him. Sam screamed and stumbled backward. The group rushed to pull him out of the hallway. He clutched the notebook, panting, eyes wide with fear. "We should follow the rules," Jamie said. Her voice was firm but trembling. "Rule number 2, stay close. Rule number 9, remain in the light. Rule number 6, mark our location." They paused to make a chalk mark on the floor to mark where they were standing. Sam made a second mark nearby, but it disappeared before their eyes. The hallway seemed to shift subtly around them. The mall was not just abandoned, it was alive, bending to observe them. The group moved slowly, each step careful. They came to a section of the mall with old holiday displays. Small Santa figurines sat on shelves. One tilted slightly, almost imperceptibly. Another garly swayed despite the lack of wind. The air grew colder, carrying faint whispers that seemed to circle them. Mark, trying to be brave, approached a darkened store to look inside. The door creaked slightly, as if it had not been touched in decades. He glanced back at the others, who hesitated. Jamie shook her head, remembering rule number 5. Do not take anything from the mall. Mark stepped inside anyway, curiosity overriding caution. The instant he entered, the shadows reacted. Something long and dark stretched along the floor toward him, coiling around his legs. His flashlight flickered and went out for a moment. When it came back on, the shadow was gone, and Mark was staggering back, breathing heavily. The group huddled together, realizing them all punished even small rule-breaking. They continued through the halls, following the notebook closely. The tension grew heavier. Lights flickered on ceilings. Garlands swayed as if unseen hands moved them. Every decoration, every reflection, every shadow felt alive. Jamie glanced at the notebook again. Rule number 10. Trust nothing you see in reflections. The fountain ahead shimmered strangely. She saw the faceless figure clearly in the water. Its glowing eyes were fixed on them. She yanked the group back from the edge. The creature did not move forward but lingered in the reflection. A distant metallic jingling echoed again. It came closer. Or perhaps it had been there all along. Sam's curiosity got the better of him again. He reached toward a loose decoration, forgetting rule number 3. The ornament jerked violently and flew toward him, narrowly missing his head. The others shouted warnings. The first consequences were now clear. Breaking rules could almost immediately put them in danger. By the time they reached a center atrium, they understood the stakes. They could not ignore the rules. The malls, shadows, and the faceless creature were patient. They were testing the group, observing every movement, waiting for the first mistake that could be fatal. Jamie clutched the notebook tightly. The group huddled together, each teenager acutely aware of the rules. They did not yet know which rule was a trap, but fear had begun to tighten around them like a living thing. The mall was no longer just abandoned. It was alive. It was waiting. The mall seemed alive now. Every step the teens took echoed in ways that made the walls feel closer. The faint jingling from before returned, louder this time, bouncing around corners and empty holes. Shadows stretched long along the floor and walls, moving in ways that did not match anyone's footsteps. The air grew colder, biting at their faces and hands, making them huddle together tighter. "We have to stick together," Jamie said, clutching the notebook. "Remember rule number 2. Sam, still curious, despite what had happened, edged toward a dark hallway. I want to see if anything is behind that store, he whispered. Sam, do not leave the lighted areas, Emily snapped, remembering rule number 9. He hesitated, then stepped forward. The shadows reacted immediately. One stretched from the wall, bending unnaturally, and seemed to coil around his legs. He screamed and stumbled back into the group, panting and wide-eyed. The faceless creature had become more active, its long limbs bent impossibly, gliding silently along the floor and walls. Its eyes glowed faintly red, fixed on them from the darkness. It did not make a sound, yet the teens could feel its presence, patient and watching. The group moved cautiously, marking their location as best they could. Some chalk marks vanished almost immediately, the hallways subtly shifting around them. Panic began to set in. They had broken minor rules, and the consequences were growing stronger. Emily was the first to test rule number 10, the trap rule. She glanced at a reflection in a fountain, curiosity overcoming her fear. The faceless figure appeared in the water. Its eyes glowed brighter, and the shadow stretched out toward her. She yelped and stepped back, but it was too late. Something invisible grabbed her, dragging her toward the fountain. Her friends lunged, trying to pull her away, but she was gone in an instant. The water rippled, leaving only silence behind. No, Emily, Jamie cried, panic in her voice. Rule number 10, do not trust reflections. Sam shivered, eyes wide. It took her. We need to follow the rules exactly. They pressed on, moving through them all cautiously. Each rule became more critical. One by one, small mistakes brought immediate consequences. Mark, forgetting rule number 8, ran down a dark hallway. A shadow shot across the floor, grabbing him and pulling him into the darkness. His scream echoed and then vanished. The remaining teens huddled together, terrified. The mall itself seemed to shift. Hallways stretched where there should have been corners. Doors appeared where none had been before. Reflections in glass and metal distorted, showing the faceless creature lurking just out of reach. The air vibrated with whispers that seemed to echo the teens' own fears. Jamie clutched the notebook tighter. We have to stay calm. We have to follow every rule. They moved slowly through the central atrium. Garlands swayed violently. Ornaments rattled without wind, and the small Santa figurines seemed to tilt toward them, almost watching. Every step, every glance carried danger. They reached a store with windows darkened by old holiday displays. Sam's curiosity again overpowered him. He stepped toward a mannequin that had shifted slightly since they had passed it before. The faceless creature peered behind it, limbs stretching impossibly long, its glowing eyes fixed on him. The shadow coiled around Sam, and he vanished with a strangled scream. The mall had claimed 3 of their friends. Only Jamie and 2 others remained. Fear had sharpened their senses. They did not move unless absolutely certain of the rules. Even then, every shadow seemed a threat. The creature watched, patient and relentless. They came across a long hallway where the lights flickered. The reflection in the floor tiles shimmered unnaturally. Jamie remembered rule number 10. She forced the others to avert their eyes, moving only by memory in lighted areas. Every corner they turned seemed darker than the last. Suddenly, a metallic jingling echoed from above, and one of the remaining teens, ignoring rule number 7, whispered a name into the empty hall. The shadow reacted immediately, stretching across the floor and walls like a living thing. The teen was pulled into darkness. Only Jamie remained. Her heart pounded in her chest. Her flashlight shook in her hand. The mall felt infinite. The faceless creature seemed to glide through walls and reflections. Every misstep was deadly. Jamie realized the rules were the only protection left. Each rule was a lifeline, and breaking even one could be fatal. She moved cautiously, remembering each rule she had read earlier. Rule number 1, never enter alone. She stayed in sight of the empty hallways. Rule number 2, stay together, though she was now alone. Rule number 3, do not touch objects that move on their own. She avoided decorations and displays, keeping to the center of the hallway. Rule number 4, keep your phone on. She tried calling for help. No signal. Only silence. Rule number 5, do not take anything from the mall. She ignored the glittering ornaments and faded holiday gifts that seemed to beckon. Rule number 6. Always mark your location. Chalk marks vanished immediately. Rule number 7. Never answer if your name is whispered. She did not speak when soft voices called to her. Rule number 8. Never run in the dark. She walked slowly, every step measured. Rule number 9. Do not leave the lighted areas. She stayed under the weak flickering bulbs. Rule number 10. Trust nothing you see in reflections. She forced herself to avoid mirrors, fountains, and glass. The creature was patient. It observed her through the shadows, through reflections, through the dark corners. It waited for her to make a mistake. Jamie knew survival required precision, patience, and fear. She pressed forward, deeper into the atrium. The air grew colder, and the shadows stretched longer. Every creak of the floor, every distant jingling, reminded her that the mole had already claimed most of her friends. The rules were a lifeline, but the trap rule had already taken one of them. She could not falter. The faceless creature glided silently, always just out of reach, its glowing red eyes marking her every move. Jamie's breath came in sharp gasps. The mole seemed alive, walls breathing and twisting. Each step was a test. She had no idea if she would escape. The remaining rules were all that stood between her and the darkness. Jamie was alone now. The silence pressed in on her from all sides. The mall no longer felt like a place built for people. It felt like a living thing that had already decided her fate and was simply waiting for her to realize it. The weak ceiling lights flickered overhead, buzzing softly, struggling to stay alive. Shadows clung to the walls, stretching and shrinking as if breathing. She held the notebook tight against her chest. Her hands were numb from the cold, but she forced herself to stay steady. Panic would get her killed. Every mistake so far had ended the same way. The mall punished carelessness. It rewarded patience. Jamie took a slow breath and whispered to herself, "Follow the rules." Her footsteps echoed as she moved forward, slow and careful. She stayed beneath the flickering lights, refusing to step into darkness. The shadows shifted anyway, sliding along the floor beside her like silent companions. She refused to look at them. A whisper drifted through the air. It sounded like her voice. It called her name in a calm tone. Jamie clenched her jaw and stayed silent. Rule number 7. Never answer if your name is whispered. The whisper faded, replaced by a low scraping sound. Something moved behind the walls. Something large. She reached the central atrium again. The fountain sat in the middle, dry and cracked, its surface faintly reflective under the lights. Jamie stopped several feet away, heart pounding. She remembered Emily. She remembered how fast it happened. Rule number 10. Trust nothing you see in reflections. Jamie turned her head away from the fountain and focused on the floor. She used the edge of her flashlight to guide her steps without looking directly at the glass or polished tiles. Her reflection still tried to creep into her vision, warped and distorted, but she refused to acknowledge it. The temperature dropped suddenly. Frost crept along the edges of nearby windows. The garlands hanging above rattled violently. The faceless creature emerged from the shadows at the far end of the atrium. It was fully visible now. Its body was tall and thin, stretched far beyond human proportions. Its limbs bent backward at unnatural angles, dragging silently along the floor. Its face was smooth and empty, with no features except glowing red eyes that burned with attention. It did not rush her. It watched. Jamie understood then. The creature did not hunt recklessly. It waited. It learned. It wanted her to break the rules. She backed away slowly, staying under the lights, keeping her eyes down. The creature mirrored her movement, gliding through shadows without making a sound. Each step it took caused the decorations to tremble. Her phone vibrated in her pocket. Jamie froze. Rule number 4. Keep your phone on. She pulled it out carefully. The screen glowed weakly. No signal. No messages. Just one notification. A camera alert. The screen switched to the front camera without her touching it. Jamie slammed her eyes shut and turned the phone face down. Rule number 10. Trust nothing you see in reflections. The creature let out a low sound. Not a roar. not a growl, something closer to disappointment. The lights ahead flickered and went out, one by one. Darkness swallowed the hallway leading forward. Jamie stopped. Rule number 8, never run in the dark. Her chest tightened. The only remaining light came from behind her, where the creature waited. She made a choice. Jamie turned and walked toward the exit she remembered from earlier, staying beneath the last working lights. Every step felt like walking through deep water. The shadows fought back, stretching toward her feet, trying to pull her off course. She reached a set of glass doors. The reflection stared back at her. The creature stood directly behind her in the glass. Jamie closed her eyes and pushed the doors open without looking. Cold air rushed over her face. Snow crunched beneath her shoes. She stumbled forward and fell into the snow outside the mall. The doors slammed shut behind her. The mall went silent. Jamie lay there for a long moment, gasping, her breath fogging the air. When she finally looked back, the mall stood dark and still, as if nothing had happened. The doors were locked. The lights were off. No shadows moved behind the glass. She was alone. Police found her hours later, wandering the road in shock. She tried to tell them about the mall, about the rules, about her friends. They searched the building. They found nothing. No notebook. No bodies. No signs of forced entry. The mall reopened months later. A cleaning crew found a leather-bound notebook tucked behind a shelf near a closed jewelry store. The cover was worn. The pages were clean. Inside were 10 rules, written carefully, as if writing. One rule had been rewritten. Rule number 10. Trust nothing you see in reflections, except yourself.